I'm going to change the storyline regardless of what these grades say. I'm very smart, very intelligent, and I've got initiative and drive like nobody's business. So I changed that story, and I really committed to these competitions and ensuring that I was able to have the conversations that I need to have with people who were considering giving me money to go to school. And then I performed as far as my skill set. I did the reps, right? There's no skipping the work. No matter what your craft is, there's no skipping those 10,000 hours. You've got to put in your reps.
When did you recognize that you might be onto something? Other people clearly did.
When I started winning.
Okay. But did you really see it as, yeah, I beat the guy, or I beat the guy because this is really good? All right, good Saturday morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to True North. I'm your host, Dirk Hobbs. Hey, quick shout out to my underwriters for this program, Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group and Boot Barn Hall. Really appreciate you guys underwriting it, because we get to hang out with really cool people like Chef Brother Luck across the board from me. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm excited.
Okay. When I say brother, I'm saying it two ways.
It just it's so natural. It just comes across easy. It's like, hey, brother. Like, especially when I'm down south or I'm like in the islands. They're like, hey, brother. I'm like, do they know me, or are they just saying what's up?
That's brilliant. Well, that is Chef Brother Luck, celebrity chef, among many other things, and we're going to get to him in just a moment. But before we do, it is a gorgeous but very chilly Colorado morning here in southern Colorado. 8 o'clock, November 2, 10 o'clock this morning. You might have something to say about this, brother. 10 a.m., Air Force starts off at West Point.
I mean, let's go.
How's that going to go, man?
You know, being here in Colorado Springs, I got to be careful. Because we got both.
Yes, we do.
I think it's going to be a great game, but I'm hoping to see Army walk away with it.
Okay. All right. Well, the loyalties go deep there, and we're going to learn that too about brother's connection with the United States Army, his family, a lot of service members there too. So the 1-6 Falcons are walking into West Point with the 7-0 Army Knights. That's a big deal, man. So anyway, I have a feeling it's going to be a rough day at the office for the Falcons, but hey, God bless them. So Navy took their first bow the other day to Notre Dame. So I think the Commander-in-Chief trophy, well, clearly it's between Army and Navy, but you got any early thoughts on that one? You guys taking the trophy, aren't you?
We'll see.
It's looking pretty good.
Everything is everything. I mean, you just got to kind of let it play out. Things happen.
Things happen. Okay, like Kentucky Ole Miss. No bueno, man. Ole Miss going into Arkansas today, so that's where I'm going to be on the couch a little later this afternoon, doing a little hottie toddy, mind you, and we're going to watch the Rebs take on the Razorbacks. So SEC football, nothing like it. But next up here in Colorado Springs, the next home game for the Falcons is November 9th. It's a night game at Fresno State. So who knows what's going to happen there. But the final game is what's interesting to me, because Oregon State's coming here for the first time, and that should be, hopefully, a very full stadium and a great game. So we'll welcome the Oregon State folks over here. But let's get to the real reason we're here. And if you want to look at his website while we're chatting here, you go to chefbrotherluck.com. So you can just kind of scroll through there and see what's going on. But he's had a tremendous run here, and it's going to be very interesting to get to know him personally. So I intentionally didn't do a whole lot of due diligence because I wanted this to be fresh and raw and
all natural.
So you're a Southern boy too.
You know, in roots,
kind of.
in blood. You know, my brother and I are the only two not raised in Louisiana. So everybody else is in the South, but we're Bay Area kids.
Okay.
And it was always entertaining getting sent out there in the summers because you didn't grow up in a bayou. So that's not actually grass. That's marsh.
That's marsh. That's
there's
right.
gators and moccasins in there. So just be a little careful. They don't have those in the city. If I hear a pit bull bark, I can tell you how far that pit bull is and what kind of pit bull that is and if I should get on your car.
Right.
But crocodiles and alligators and snakes, that's a different level.
Yeah, totally different level. Well, look, You started in San Francisco. I'm interested in what the young brother was like.
Man, young brother Luck.
Were you a feisty kid?
No, I was actually a really reserved child.
Pretty chill?
Really chill, into books, very, very sensitive, and just kind of like sheltered,
Okay.
And it's so funny because my brother and I are exact opposites. Like his nickname was Monster because he was just the wild child.
Okay.
And, for the two of us, life was good. And then at 10 years old, my father passed away in one day. It happened quick. He was gone. And next thing I know, I'm being forced into a world without my protector, without the person that I'm supposed to emulate, without the person that is my reflection. I don't have that protection anymore. And being in the inner city, growing up in the Bay Area, you're introduced to a lot of things and exposed to a lot of things in that environment that aren't the most positive. So as a young adult, I mean, I was a knucklehead. I got into trouble. I did things in the streets because that I was a product of my environment, and that's all I knew.
What specific part of San Fran were you in?
Originally grew up in just outside the Tenderloin, right downtown, and then eventually transitioned out to Oakland on the East Bay. So I was out there, Vallejo, but all over the Bay Area.
Okay. And you and your brother, you still close?
Not right now.
Okay.
He's a soldier who has one of those stories where he got hurt, got hooked on opiates when the VA cut him off. He transitioned to the harder stuff, and now he's out there in the streets, just kind of lost in his pain.
I'm sorry to hear that, man.
No, it's life.
Yeah.
I think we all have these stories, and we all know these stories, but a lot of us don't talk about these stories because of our shame or our lack of understanding that most of it isn't on us, right? And it's important, I think, to share this stuff because the more vulnerable we are, the more people we can reach.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do know behavioral health is a topic that you are very passionate about, and I do want to spend some time there downstream as we get into the conversation. But let's back up a little bit. Let's get to know kind of your upbringing, your time with. Is his real name Monster?
No, that was his nickname. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, his real name's Slate.
Slate. Okay.
Yeah.
So you and Slate growing up together, and of course, Mom's in the picture there. Were you guys all close? Pretty close family?
Yeah, I think for the most part in the beginning, we were really close. But my mom did the best she could.
Yeah.
And as an adult, I can say that now because I can look back on the story, understand her perspective, understand her situation as an adult. But as a child in the situation, you don't see that. You're selfish.
Of course not. Yeah.
And for many years, I had that resentment. I had that anger. I had that buildup. And it took me a long time to kind of understand her side of things. Mm-hmm. And now I can realize she did the best she could with what she had. But, we all kind of went our separate ways. I ended up in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
By the time I was 16, I was in a vocational program. One of those programs where it's, you're probably not going to college, so we're going to teach you a skill. So here's a vocation.
Yeah.
And I took culinary.
Okay.
And culinary for me was simply, I was going to meet some girls and I was going to get free lunch. Like, that's my
Very
mindset
practical.
as a 16-year-old kid. That's my mindset. Like, hey, girl. Yeah. What I didn't expect to find in that program was positive male role models. I found mentorship in this program and these grown men who gave me not only direct attention, but discipline, guidance, and accountability. Mm-hmm. And as they set that tone for me, which hadn't existed because of the loss of my father, it was this positive reinforcement that kind of fueled me. There was no longer the negative connotation of, hey, go do this, go take care of the situation, and using you to kind of get things for themselves. This was, hey, you're really good at cooking. Do that again. And that's what made me want to become a chef. Was I was searching, and obviously this is many, many years of therapy, I was searching for that validation.
Of course.
And that drove me for most of my career. So, when I look back on how much I've accomplished and what I've done, a lot of it stems from that 16-year-old boy who found a grown man to say good job.
So what other attributes did those men have that you may not have been able to articulate then, but maybe can articulate now, that you thought that they had that led you into that mentorship role?
Yeah, I when I look back on what were the attributes that those chefs carried that really drew me to them, it really stems from what I valued as the most important things that I saw, which was power and respect. Like, if you had power and respect in the streets, you were on top. You had things, you had possessions, you had people who looked up to you, you had people around you. And I idolized that because that's all I knew. When I found a different source, I gravitated towards that because it was more positive, and they fueled me by education. And that was something I think from a mentorship role, we don't realize the strength in sometimes, is that education is a great motivator.
Indeed it is. And then an educator with a heart and passion and compassion is equally effective.
Absolutely.
Because they're translating that into how they're encouraging you, how they're course correcting you, or advising you in different components of what you're doing, whether it's a technical skill like being in the kitchen, or whether it's just life skills.
Absolutely.
Relationships with people and otherwise. So Chef Brother Luck is hanging out with us, and as you can tell, we're going to have a very different conversation, because obviously his culinary prowess precedes him. His reputation in the kitchen and elsewhere in the community precedes him as someone with extraordinary talent and depth, and somebody who has experienced a complete transition in his life. And I'm very interested to unpack that a little bit more with you, brother. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you. And again, if you're listening or watching and you'd like to get to know him personally a little better, he's got a great book out called No Luck's Given. We're going to touch on that a little bit as well. But go to chefbrotherluck.com and get to know this gentleman. You're going to be very surprised and very appreciative of where he's come from and what he's doing next. Back in a moment. All right, we're back here, second quarter, True North. I'm your host, Dirk Hobbs. I'm hanging out with Chef Brother Luck. And, you might think you know this gentleman, and maybe you do. Maybe you've read his book. Maybe you've been to some of his culinary classes here in Southern Colorado or elsewhere around the country. And, delightful gentleman, somebody who has learned quite a bit in his young life. And, I wondered if you had been born in the Southeast, how things would have been different.
Who knows?
You ever look at that?
No, I'm grateful for every bit of me, because I'm authentically me. Like, I'm a one-of-a-kind recipe, as we all are.
Right.
And I think there's something so empowering about connecting to that understanding.
Yep.
Like, you are one of a kind. You have to embrace every bit of your story, because your story is so authentic and it is so unique. And it's why we have to talk about our stories more, because our stories aren't for us. They're for someone else to hear.
That's right.
And as we share those stories, man, you can become a catalyst. It's insane, the conversations that you'll spark because of it.
So we were in Arizona. The 16-year-old brother is in culinary school. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, was this a specific culinary school, or was this a vocational component of your high school education?
It was a secondary school that was in the heart of Phoenix. So kids from all over Metro Phoenix would actually come to this one vocational school to learn a trade.
Got it.
So you could take ROTC, you could be a mechanic, you could do hair, kind of whatever you wanted to choose. So I just figured girls and food.
Girls and food. Keep it simple, man. Keep it simple. All right. So we're in these classes. If I had come up to you somehow magically and showed you your website today, a book with your face on it, you hanging out with some of the folks that you've spent a little bit of time with, you owning 3 restaurants and really starting to evolve as a more of a national brand, what would you have said to me?
I'd have laughed at you.
Yeah.
Like, man, you're crazy.
You're crazy.
Get out of here.
Would you have really said that?
Yeah. My mindset, especially back then, was survive today.
Okay.
Like, I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I'm trying to get home. I'm trying not to get jumped on my way home. I'm trying not to get caught up in some nonsense on my way home. And this culinary thing is fun, but I don't know where I'm going. I have no direction, you know, and a lot of my focus actually at the time was military. That's where I wanted to go. That was my intention. And when I got into conversations with recruiters and they looked at some of them, they asked about a lot of my medical history and they got into the respiratory stuff. They were like, I'll never forget it. The recruiter told me, he said, if you had to save the world and push a button and you couldn't because you needed your puffer, that's why you won't be in the military. And it was such a blow to have that kind of put at me, that I knew I had to find another way to get out of my situation.
Okay.
And that's how I got into competitive cooking. And at 16, 17 years old, I got into a competitive cooking circuit that eventually led me to a national circuit, which I didn't really know existed except through this program. And as I started competing, you know, I essentially took my sports mentality of playing ball to cooking. And I came into it with that kind of aggression of, I'm going to practice and I'm going to be so prepared that when it's game day, I'm going to deliver. And
so you're an athlete.
When I came into these cooking competitions, I mean, I had like hype songs I listened to in my head,
sure,
and I get ready for it, and then I'd execute, and I would win. So eventually, by the time my senior year came around, I had been named Arizona Best Teen Chef. I had got on to the national circuit, gone on to compete in Atlanta, Georgia. Had competed in so many different competitions that I had amassed a full tuition scholarship through so many small scholarships. So none of it was academic based. It was all
skills based.
Yeah, and it sent me to college. It sent me to culinary school, and it allowed me to pursue the next part of my education, the next part of my mentorship, and I had more great people come into my life at that time. One of them being my wife's parents, who pretty much set a rule. They said, you can live with us, because they saw my situation, as long as you go to school.
Still in Phoenix?
Still in Phoenix. Mm-hmm. So absolutely powerful. I love them so much, especially to this day, because they took a chance on me when many people wouldn't. And taking me out of that environment and giving me a safe space changed my entire life. And I don't think I would be who I am today had I not had someone take that chance on me.
What was the tipping point for you in the classroom, elsewhere? Maybe you went home that night and you were fooling around with some food, or maybe you had an interaction with a mentor when they said, you know what, brother, you actually have something here.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Well, I remember a friend of mine had earned a scholarship to cooking school the year prior to me graduating. It was my junior year. And I remember walking up to the chef and saying, there's like a school for this? And he said, yeah, it's called culinary school. And I said, could I go? And he said, absolutely, you can go. And he asked me my GPA, and I was like, oh, chef, I've showed up every day this semester. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, I need to see your overall GPA. And I remember going to my homeschool, printing out my cumulative, and the story that it told did not reflect the person that I wanted to be.
Of course. Yes.
And it just sparked something in me of like, I'm going to change the storyline regardless of what these grades say. I'm very smart, very intelligent, and I've got initiative and drive like nobody's business. So I changed that story, and I really committed to these competitions and ensuring that I was able to have the conversations that I need to have with people who were considering giving me money to go to school. And then I performed as far as my skill set. I did the reps, right? There's no skipping the work. No matter what your craft is, there's no skipping those 10,000 hours. You've got to put in your reps.
When did you recognize that you might be onto something? Other people clearly did.
When I started winning.
Okay. But did you really see it as, yeah, I beat the guy, or I beat the guy because this is really good?
No, I knew that culinary was a real thing for me when I started having the college instructors come to my school and recruit me for their cooking teams on a college level.
Okay.
And it's something most people don't know exists. on in the culinary world, but there's actually competitive teams at culinary schools that go across the country and compete at conventions and against other schools. And I had these teachers actually coming to my school and saying, hey, I want you to come with me to Tucson and watch this competition because you're going to be on my team next season. And that was like, it just built my ego as a young chef, young cook, to realize like, wow, this is actually something major. There's Culinary Olympics. There's all these different organizations that you can go into and compete. And I think knowing that I wasn't getting above 6'1", I wasn't going anywhere as far as like a D1 school. So I'm going to commit to culinary because I'm actually a badass in this arena.
Right. So
that was all in when I got into it.
And you just knew. I mean, you knew you had the skill. You knew you had the prowess. What about the taste? The taste buds. I mean, at what point does a chef truly have mastery of various tastes?
You know, I don't think I understood my palate until probably my mid-30s. And a lot of that comes from my job as a chef, especially, is to eat. I have to taste. I can't tell you what good food is if I don't know what good food tastes like. And I have a catalog built in my head as far as many ingredients. And when I think of an ingredient, a kumquat, I can immediately think of the oils that are in the skin, how thick the skin is, how much acid is in that kumquat, how a ripe kumquat should taste versus an unripe kumquat should taste, the different style of citrus notes that it's going to carry versus like a tangerine or a mandarin or a blood orange or a Meyer lemon. I have these flavor profiles memorized in my head. So when I'm writing dishes and I'm creating, I actually go back to that bank of flavor profiles and say, what goes well with what? And I can taste it in my head before I actually put it on paper, before I actually cook it and prepare the dish. So a lot of that comes from just the experience of eating. And, you know, that's the beauty of culinary is my job is to travel the world, experience cultures, experience cuisine, and then bring it back to my community, bring it back to my team.
Okay. An experiment or?
Oh, absolutely. That's the best part.
That's like, the alchemy of food, right?
I get to eat every day. Like I cook what I want. Like,
so the food insecurity thing is gone.
It's gone. Yeah. I am no longer hungry. I am a big guy because I get to eat every day.
Well, it's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when I got into this industry, I knew that I could work anywhere in the world. I would never go hungry and I would always have a job. And true to this day, I still believe in that.
And you're passing that along?
Absolutely. I mean, I love spending time with our team members. And even when you watch a lot of our social programs in our restaurants, on our social media, we're recognizing these young personalities, these young talents, because they will be the next leaders. They will be the next chefs in charge. And we're creating their philosophies and their values that are going to change this industry. Yeah. So it's powerful.
Very good. Brother Luck's hanging out with me. And I got to tell you, you know, the more I listen to you, the more I appreciate your story and from where you've come and from where you're headed. So I appreciate that about you. So in the next couple quarters, we're going to get to know Brother on a little bit of a different level. So, you know, in the breaks, we were kind of talking about, you know, what it's like to be a man in this world these days. And, you know, where we can find strength and peace and encouragement in a society that is hell-bent on breaking us down a lot. So we're going to figure that out from his perspective and some of the tools he uses to get through day-to-day life. Back in a moment. All right, we're back here, third quarter with Chef Brother Luck in the house, and it is a cool November 2nd here in Southern Colorado. Glad you're with us. And kick back and relax because we're going to get to know this gentleman a little bit further and some of his journey from, you know, Central California, Bay Area, San Francisco to Phoenix. And we leave Phoenix for Colorado, or there's some other stops in there, brother?
Yeah, a couple other stops. Ended up in Texas. I was down in San Antonio for a while and relocated here to Colorado Springs.
When did you get here?
I got here originally in 2006.
Got it.
I was the executive sous chef at Cheyenne Mountain Resort. Fell in love with Colorado Springs. I mean, the beauty, the people, the community, the simplicity, especially coming from a large city.
Yeah.
Coming here was so refreshing. And, the things that I missed about the city is what actually made me leave Colorado Springs. And I left Colorado Springs after 3-4 years to go to Chicago because I wanted to be back in the city. And after Chicago, ended up back in Texas. And it took me leaving Colorado Springs to appreciate Colorado Springs, like truly. And that's what made me want to move back here, start a business, build a business. And I had to figure it out. There is no game plan. As much as you want to learn about business plans and get all this information in school, there is no right way to start a business. You just start it and you figure it out and you try not to make the same mistakes twice because they're very expensive. And that's what I came back to do. I ended up coming back here in 2012 as the executive chef of a restaurant called Craftwood Inn on Manitou Springs.
Sure.
And within 10, 11 months, I realized I was ready. And I started my restaurant in the back of a punk rock bar. Not how I ever envisioned my first restaurant. It was wild. There was mosh pits, there was mohawks, there was leathers, there was patches. And it made no sense, but it's how I started my business. And I'm so grateful for that story today. Here we are, 12 years later, because it's shaped who I am as a business person. It shaped who I am as a leader. But I'm also extremely appreciative of everything I have, like not being a part of corporations. I don't have that funding or resourcefulness that you have when you work for those organizations.
So I got to ask, what were you cooking for that audience?
Oh, anything. I mean, I always joke because like I didn't grow up in punk rock. I grew up in hip hop.
Hip hop. Yeah.
So growing up in hip hop, it's different philosophy, different mindset. But punk rock, it was so aggressive and so angry.
Angry, yeah.
And when they would come up to me after the shows or during the shows and be like, "What do you got?" And they're like, "You don't have anything vegan?" And I'm like, "That's why you're so angry. You need a steak in your life." Here's some short ribs. So I was cooking all this like crazy stuff. I would write the menu every day based on what I could find in the markets. I would hit people up to get into their gardens at home. I would get samples from vendors. I created every single day, and I think it's some of the cleanest cooking I did for the first few years of my entrepreneurship is because it was so raw and it was so authentic.
Okay.
Because I had no idea what I'm doing.
That's right.
And there wasn't like a strict like, this is our brand and this is our marketing strategy and this is our identity. And
you were just cooking.
I was just cooking.
Yeah.
And people love that.
For angry people.
Yeah, for very angry people. And it made them nice. I mean, they were like, man, these jalapeno poppers or these chicken wings or this bacon jam burger or this, whatever I was cooking, I was getting a lot of good reception on. And it's what kept pushing me to say, okay, we've got to get out of this scenario. We've got to get into a better situation where we can control the environment more.
Yeah.
And that led me to my first restaurant on the west side. A couple years later, that led me to downtown and just started to build something.
So that must have been, I can only imagine this audience, their level of appreciation for what you do and what you were doing at that time, because, they're out there, like you said, in the mosh pit, heavy metal rock stars.
Yeah.
And then, they're off on the side.
Well, and the thing
hanging
is,
out with jalapeno poppers and whatnot.
I came up around a lot of musicians. I came up around a lot of rappers and DJs, and they would travel. They were always on the road, always in a van, always in a car from city to city to do their shows. Mm-hmm. And you realize, like, especially when they're your friends, how crappy they eat.
Yeah.
So no matter where I was at in the country cooking, when they came to my city, I always invited them to my house, and we'd throw a party or a barbecue and make sure they got fed. So my philosophy in that scenario, especially back then when I was at the Triple Nickel, a lot of it was these guys have been on the road and they're going to be so grateful to actually not have fast food. So there was an appreciative attitude when it came to what I was cooking.
Sure. When did the term celebrity chef and Brother Luck intersect?
Guy Fieri.
Okay.
Guy Fieri came to Colorado Springs. His team reached out to me. And they said, we want to film Triple D at your restaurant, Street Eats at the time. And I was like, I'm good. I was so egotistical.
I'm good.
I was so cocky. I shut it down so fast. And I didn't even think about the business side of this or the exposure or the opportunity that was being presented to me at the time. And I just shut it down because I was the egomaniac at the time. And he came to town. He filmed at a number of restaurants, and every one of those restaurants were busy except for mine. And it was
That'll get your attention.
it was such a taste of reality, of the power of the celebrity chef. And I watched our city chase him from restaurant to restaurant, and all of our media was going crazy about where he was filming today and what he was doing. And it made me realize that nobody was representing our city on that level. We didn't have a brand ambassador cooking at that level. Denver wouldn't invite Colorado Springs chefs to their events. We wouldn't get invited to the Aspen events. Like, we were a meat and potato town, we were a corporate chain town, and then we had the Broadmoor. And Broadmoor's Broadmoor, which is, an institution, and
it's great.
They do amazing things, but like, they are them, and they stay in their world. So I had a chip on my shoulder, and I'll never forget having a conversation with a mentor who told me, brother, you're an idiot to pass up on that type of marketing opportunity when you are in a third tier market. You just missed. You missed genuine. And I flew home from New York after that conversation. I was like, I'm going to get on TV. I'm going to get on TV. I'm going to become the person that represents Colorado Springs, and I'm going to prove to him that I'm not dumb. And
the mentor.
My mentor.
Got it.
And my first TV show was Beat Bobby Flay. And to get on to Food Network to represent Colorado Springs, to go against someone that I respect and idolized for a number of years, and get the chance to compete against and then walk away with a win, was huge. And that led to a number of Food Network shows. Because then I got a taste of it. I had the bug. I was looking for the validation. I felt like doing these TV shows was going to make me a good chef. It was going to make me a well-respected business owner. And I was doing these shows for the wrong reasons. And it wasn't until I filmed my second season of Bravo's Top Chef that I broke mentally. What was supposed to be like the highlight of my career, being on this national television show, getting the opportunity to cook against some of the greatest chefs in the country at the time. When I got kicked off, it triggered so much of my past of the neglect and the you're not good enough, my insecurities that I've been hiding. I was in the situation where, you're put into a sequester at the hotel after you're kicked off the show. And it's a cool off period. We want to keep you around for interviews and all that. But I fueled it with alcohol. And as I sat in this hotel room drinking, I got lost in my voice, that internal voice that we have that was like, you aren't good enough. You shouldn't have even come. You've let everyone down. And I started to believe these lies that I was telling myself. And as I got deeper and deeper into that bottle, I started to take them sleeping pills. And I was done. I was like, I'm done. You're right. I don't need to be here. And I gave up on myself that night. And I'll never forget waking up the next morning out of that stupor and making eye contact with myself in the mirror that was by the bed. And that connection was pure shame. And I just broke. I just started to cry. And that emotion was tears of so many years of pain and hurt and struggle and insecurity that I just locked away, because I was taught to be tough, to be hard, to be strong, to not show weakness, to not show emotion. Figure it out. You're a man. And that wasn't good enough. That wasn't enough defense for what I had on the inside. And I requested to leave the show. And that's kind of what started my journey of, I've got to figure out what I've got going on inside me.
And they let you go.
Yeah, they let, the thing was, it's an act of God. That morning when I woke up in my shame, the news was on, and I'll never forget this. The news was on, and they broke the story of Anthony Bourdain, the other celebrity chef, had taken his life that night. So the same night that I'd given up on myself and said, I don't want to be here, and intentionally tried to end it, he succeeded. And that was so real, especially for production, because this is somebody who's in our industry, who was a personality. And that's I think one of the things that really helped allow me to get out of my contract to go home and, start to try to take care of myself.
And you started to heal.
Yeah.
And what were some of the mechanisms you used to heal?
At first there was nothing. It was, I'm just going to numb myself with work. I'm going to distract myself. I can bury myself in projects, and at work, I'm in control. I'm in charge. I'm the boss. I'm the leader. I don't have to answer to anyone. And I liked that piece of it. And that wasn't enough of a distraction. It took getting to see a therapist. It took being vulnerable and willing to talk with a therapist and share, which allowed me to start really digging deeper. And I had a strange moment in church one day where something was calling me to join a men's group. There was a promo on the screen that the church was doing, and it's like, men, we need you to be more vulnerable. And I remember walking out with my wife after church and saying, I need to go back in. I need to join one of these groups. And she was so caught off guard because it was very unlike me that she was like, do what you got to do. And I walked back in. I met with one of the elders, and I was like, how do I sign up? And I started my first journey of Wild at Heart, which changed my life.
Great book. We're back in a moment with Chef Brother Luck. Obviously, we're getting to it now. Still waters run deep. Stick with us. All right, we're in the fourth quarter with Chef Brother Luck, a celebrity chef here in Southern Colorado. And he is actually growing a reputation around the world for being one of the top chefs in the country. And it's, I got to tell you, it's a pleasure sitting here talking to you, because the easy thing to do would be to talk about your restaurants, your recipes and all that good stuff, which is great, right? And
I beat Bobby Flay.
Oh, that's a good day, right? It's a good day's work. But you have, you've got a lot of media out there, coverage on that, and that probably never gets old from sharing your art perspective, I would imagine. But the thing I appreciate about this conversation, brother, is the fact that we can talk man to man. And I would encourage our listeners to kind of lean in a little bit, because we're going to get down to it, because men in particular, we tend to wrap ourselves with this persona, this ideological look at ourselves, whether you're a celebrity chef or the CEO of a company or a professional athlete. Doesn't matter what it is. But then you start to bifurcate two personalities. You've got one that's on stage, or on, if you will, in the office or wherever you happen to be. And then there's that one that you lie down next to your spouse, or you're hanging out with your kids, and they're looking at you going, who are you? Okay, what is that aspect of your personality? I want the real you. And you've got some great perspectives on this, brother, because you have been at extraordinary lows in your life, and you have an amazing capacity to look at yourself in the mirror. I'm struck by that, and be very critical and honest with yourself. That's really hard for men, because I think we start to try to fool ourselves into thinking, okay, we can pull ourselves out of this. We can do this. We can do that, without really making fundamental changes to our outlook, our disposition, the mechanics of our daily life, and our authenticity. That's a big thing with you.
Yeah.
Is pulling out and withdrawing and being that authentic person in every format, in every scenario we're in, whether the lights are on or whether we're sitting at home just pinning out something or hanging out with our wife.
Yeah.
Your wife said something to you coming out of church one day. It was very pivotal when you said, I think I want to join a men's group. She said, all right, do what you do. But then she said something else that struck me, that really struck you.
Yeah.
And maybe it was the catalyst for real change in your life.
Yeah, I think having the question posed to me of, am I talking to chef or am I talking to brother? It made it a reality that I was carrying two personas, one professional, one personal. And I thought to myself, did I create this persona in my professional career who is the exact opposite of who I am as a person? Am I creating these characteristics that I'm uncomfortable with because I have to display them every day in my job. Why can't I do that in my personal life?
Right.
And I didn't like that she viewed me as two people. So I had to start to break down this wall of getting to know each other, which sounds so strange. It's like, some deep stuff right there. But essentially, I had to get to know who I was in this persona, this amplified version of myself, this facade that I was creating.
Almost a caricature of ourselves.
This is who I want you to see.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you the real me. I've created this persona that I want you to meet because I like that person.
Yeah.
That person's awesome. That person's in charge. That person knows what they're doing. Not the person who's scared. Not the person who has anxiety. Not the person who has pain and hurt. Not the person who is struggling and is depressed. Not the person who feels weak but won't ever talk about it because I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be labeled. I don't want sympathy. I have too much pride for that. That's how I was raised. I think more men especially need to hear that part. Talking about what's going on inside, your mental health, your struggles, your fear, does not make you look weak. Like, I'm 6'2", 230. I'm not weak. I'm a very strong person. I'm actually stronger because I can talk about my pain and my weakness.
Boom.
And I can share that. That is the piece that we have to constantly tap into, because so many of us are tapping into our anger and our hurt to find motivation to get us through tough situations. That's how we call that our mental toughness. We're tapping into that pain. But the thing is, you've built walls in your life to protect yourself from whatever happened to you in your past. And you don't want to let those walls down because it's going to let in whatever you're battling against. But the thing is on the other side of that wall, you're by yourself. You've built those walls. There's no one over there. And we're most dangerous to ourselves because we're most critical of ourselves. But when we tap into that pain and that hurt, we let down those walls to get to it, because that's usually what we're protecting ourselves from. Mm-hmm. That is depleting. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had to use that anger or that hurt or that pain to get through a tough situation in my life. And then I am exhausted for weeks afterwards.
Amen, brother.
Yep. And that's not good enough. Like, why can't I tap into something more positive or something like love or the positivity or the courage that I have when I look at myself? Most men especially can't look at themselves in the mirror and go, I like you.
I agree with that. And I think a lot of that stems from, and tell me what you think, is, there's a cultural backlash on men in general in the United States, probably elsewhere, but our cultural disdain for men and almost animating them into silly creatures, at the family level, at the father level, and everything else, I think it's been really detrimental.
Yeah.
So, brother, you were talking about the wall, and the only person there is you, and that's really where the enemy can come in and really get a lot of work done.
Yeah.
If we let it.
Mm-hmm.
How did you start to pull yourself out of that, and from where do you draw your strength?
Yeah, I think the first part is you have to identify who your enemy is.
Okay.
And most of the time it's you. And once you realize who that enemy is, you can start to assess their skill set. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And when you're looking at that internally, because it is you, you can start to find resolution. You can start to find resources, different ways of recognizing the situation that you're in. Mm-hmm. So for me personally, I have to recognize when I'm in a funk. It helps me get out of it faster because I realize I'm in a funk. When before I was just in it, and I was just pissed off. Yep. And the thing is like we're hardest on the people who love us the most because we think they won't go anywhere.
Not true.
Right? Your kids, your spouses, your close friends, those are the ones you're hardest on. And they catch the brunt of it because they're not going to go nowhere anymore, most likely. those are the ones you have to pull closest. I've literally reassessed my circle. You know, my circle is so small, it's a period. Like I've got 4 quarters, not 100 pennies. And that's how I've actually had to reassess everything. You know, and it is so funny. He's the mayor now, but Yemi's a good friend of mine. I've known Yemi a long time. And Yemi actually asked me this question one day. He said, brother, if Jesus had 12, who's yours? Who's your 12? Who are the 12 relationships in your life that you're working on, that you have, who are closest to you? And it was such an aha moment in my life that I actually reassessed my 12. And your 12 are going to change, right? Just like your garden.
Yep.
Like your weeds are going to be picked and more flowers are going to grow. But like your 12, you've got to really focus on those relationships because those are the ones that matter. I was chasing validation and relationships with people that were colleagues, not friends. And those aren't the people who are going to be at my bedside when I'm down at my lowest or I'm sick, right? The people who were there with you most likely during the pandemic, those are your 12. Who brought you toilet paper?
Yep, that's right. That's your next book, man. 4 quarters versus 100 pennies. I love that phrase.
Thank you.
We got about 2.5 minutes here, man. I want to give, obviously, a shout out to your book. You can find it, folks, on chefbrotherluck.com. Get out there and get this book. It's called No Luck's Given. It's a great book. And I just want to give you a few minutes to give us some pearls, brother, from your experience, what you've learned, and where you think you are now, and where you want to be. Let's give it 5 years.
You know, what I've walked away with from understanding my story is I had to review my story. And that's what I was taught throughout the Wild at Heart series was your timeline is what you have to understand. And that timeline is what sparked my book. It's essentially a deeper dive into my timeline to see who I am and how I got to being broken when I should have been at my highest. As I've reached that pinnacle and come out of that, I've found self-confidence. And I think when I'm looking at the future, you know, I just want to be present in the moment because tomorrow's not promised for any of us. And we've all experienced death in our lives. We know how fast this life can just disappear. So, you know, I want to be present in the moment. I want to be present in my businesses. I want to be present in my relationship. I want to be present in my life. And I also want to make time for myself because we get one shot at this. So, you know, hopefully in the next 5 years, I'm still golfing every day. And
all right,
I'm finding time for myself. I'm cooking because it's what I love. I'm spending time with my beautiful wife because that's my best friend. And, you know, I'm just getting to appreciate the seconds that we have because once they're gone, they're gone. Time waits for no one. So check out the book, chefbrotherluck.com. No Luck's Given. Life is hard, but there's hope. You can follow me on every social platform at Chef Brother Luck. And come check out the restaurants. It's a reflection of who we are as people. And, you know, there's small businesses here in our community. 4 by Brother Luck. Lucky Dumpling. That restaurant doesn't exist no more. 1118 Latin Tapas Bar. Of course, we have the private studio. And then next year, stay tuned because we've got a restaurant coming in Colorado Springs Airport, Street Eats by Brother Luck.
People from all over the country are going to get a taste of you. Hey, man, I appreciate the level of conversation we had here today. Absolutely. I hope you did too. And I hope you did as well, folks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Pick up this book because men in particular, there's a lot of pearls of wisdom in here from this young gentleman, and he's just getting started.
Yeah.
So, yeah, congratulations.
Get on Spotify too. I did the audio, so you can just listen to me talk.
That'll do too. Chef Brother Luck, thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you. All right, folks, we'll see you next week.